to episode 17 of Chakmah Choter. We're going to resume where we left off in our last program by sharing what was revealed by a man whose name means he listens to God through an individual known as the gift to another whose name means beloved. And I'm going to read the prophecy again, just because it happens to be my favorite. I won't comment on it and belabor it to this time because I spent an entire hour and a half celebrating everything I love about this prophecy in our last program, but we'll use it as we move forward and consider other relevant prophecies for this time. There is the myth that what I'm going to share with you pertain to a life that is now over. The Christian New Testament has Dowd not only dead and buried and still in his tomb and not in heaven. They claim that according to the New Testament that Dowd didn't make it into heaven, which means God's beloved son, God couldn't save. So I don't know what hope there would be for the rest of us, but no one questions the stupidity of religion because religion isn't predicated upon knowing or thinking. It's all based on beliefs. The fact is that what I'm sharing with you is instructive for all time, and it also pertains to our time. It came to be when the king, this would be Dowd, sat down and relaxed in his home because Yahweh had given him a comforting respite from his adversaries, that the king said to Nathan the prophet, "Please look around. I live in a house of cedar, but the Ark of the Covenant sits within curtains." So Nathan said to the king, "Choose to go and do all that is in your best judgment for Yahweh." But then that evening, it came to be that the word of Yahweh came to Nathan. He conveyed, "Go and tell Dowd, my co-worker, that this is what Yahweh says. Why should you build me a home to live in?" Indeed, I have not lived in any house since the time that I lifted the children of Israel out of the crucibles of religious and political oppression in Mitzrayim, even to this day. And I have been going about in a tent dwelling. Anywhere along the way that I have sojourned with the children of Israel, did I say a single word to any of the tribes of Israel, my people, Israel, who I fed, asking, "Why not build me a house of cedar?" Therefore say to my associate Dowd, this is what Yahweh of the spiritual implements conveys. I took you from the sheepfold, from chasing after lammies, to being the leader over my people, over Israel. And I have been with you wherever you have traveled. I have cut off all of your enemies, removing them from your sight, and I have made your name great, greater than the names of the greatest on earth. Furthermore, I will appoint a place for my people, Israel, and I'm going to plant them there such that they may dwell in this place of their own and never have to move again. Neither shall the son of evil afflict them anymore, as will have been the case. I will interrupt just one moment to say, the thing that makes Dowd the most important and famous of the characters in Yahweh's long story with his relationship with humankind. There are many. But one of the most prominent of them is that he not only unified all Yisrael, he not only protected all Yisrael, he not only brought Yisrael into Jerusalem and expanded the territory that Yisrael and Yehudim were living in to the original footprint that Yahweh had foretold. This means that they were planted at that time of this in Israel. It was even began with, I have created for you a respite from your enemies, a quiet time for you at peace. So Israel was at that time at peace, living in the land of Israel, which means when he says that I will bring them back, well, they will never have to move again, that they will not have been afflicted by the son of evil, which is now a future individual, as will have been the case in the past. That this is speaking of what God has recently done and brought Israel back. But that story is not complete because they are being moved. They are being tormented by the sons of evil. In fact, we even have the Sons of Evil Betrayal of Israel tour being led by the Donald as I speak to you now. So this is speaking of how what occurred in 1948 will continue to develop through 2033, a year 6,000, when Israel will never be troubled again. And since that time that I instructed the judges, that would be the man who wrote this down, Samuel, in conjunction with my people, Israel, and what he instructed him about in the last most and complete instruction to Samuel was when Samuel said, they have rejected me. They want a political ruler like the Gentiles. And Yahweh said to Samuel, no, they did not reject you. Israel has rejected me. Now, this is at the time of Dod, now, after the long betrayal and rejection of Yahweh's helping hand, telling God to shut up and go away during the Exodus and constantly bemoaning every step of the way, that 400 years later, Israelis are still rejecting Yahweh. And they were actually closer to Yahweh at this time than they have been at any time since. God also told them, giving them 12 specific points, that a human governance scheme in the vein of the Gentiles, which brought religion and politics together and made the head of state also the chief warrior, commander-in-chief, like we have in the United States, and politicians speaking in the name of God. He gave a 12-point dissertation through Samuel to his people and to us as to why God despises human political schemes, government, politics. And of course, the most repeated theme throughout the Torah and prophets is God's disdain for religion. God is very different in reality than the religious portraits of him. And since that time that I instructed the judges in conjunction with my people, Yisrael, that means that there is no church. God's people are not Goyim. They're Jews, Yisrael. I have created for you a respite from all of your enemies. Moreover, Yahweh is boldly and publicly announcing for you that indeed he will act, engaging with you to create the family and build the home. Dowd would create the family when he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim 1,000 years after this prophecy. And he will build Yahweh's home 3,000 years from the time this prophecy was delivered. 33 CE, 2033. When you will have laid down your life, the fulfillment of Passover, in association with your ancestors, because of the instructions that are in the Torah, I will rise up and I will take a stand to bring to fruition what you have sown. What Dowd has sown, his people have neglected. He sowed the seeds of our reconciliation, of eternal life, and of the fruit of our perfection, so that we might become the firstborn family of the covenant with Yahweh. But everyone, beginning with Jews, particularly the rabbis, chose not only to ignore what Dowd did, but to discredit him. They claim that he cannot be the son of God because they claim God can't have a son. But God claims otherwise, but that doesn't matter to the religious. They are looking for an unnamed warrior Messiah when God said, my Messiah is Dowd. But that doesn't mean anything to the rabbis because, well, they want what they want. Yahweh in Dowd, in passages like this, spoke of Dowd laying down his life and Yahweh taking a stand boldly and publicly based upon what he had achieved. And yet the Jews of the first century in Judea ignored it. They did not acknowledge that it was Dowd fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, even though he had told them explicitly the date that he was going to do so 700 years earlier, and even though he had described crucifixion 1,000 years earlier, when crucifixion didn't even exist, but giving us the medical method that crucifixion actually kills in his prophecy in the 22nd Mizmor in first person, and the timeline of his arrival was given via Daniel 9. It was all there. Yahweh's declaration of what he would achieve with his son was scribed in year 968 BCE, year 3000 Yah, exactly 1,000 years before Dowd would honor the accolades and the song. Jews disavowed him. And that gave an opportunity for a horrendous Jew, his name was Shaul, Paul, to create a counterfeit, a Iusu Christu, that is a counterfeit through identity theft of Dowd, robbing deliberately, knowingly, purposefully, robbing Dowd of everything God and his son had said, robbing him of his title, his relationship with God, his fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, all of it. The fact that he's the returning king, every bit of it, to give to this myth known as Iusu Christu, Jesus Christ. And to counter that, rather than telling them that, wait a minute, you've misinterpreted, misquoted, misappropriated all of the prophets in the Torah in this regard, in fact, contradicted what God actually said about what was going to happen, as is obvious and as I am doing for you and have continually done for you, to dispel the myth of Jesus Christ and Christianity, a church and Gentiles stealing everything that belongs to God's people. Rabbi Akiba, the father of rabbinic Judaism, brought Rome back to bear, this ultimate beast that became the Roman Catholic Church, caused the diaspora, and did so by foisting another false Messiah. So now there were two false Messiahs robbing God's people of their salvation. And so it is God that has to rise up and take a stand to bring to fruition what Dowd has actually sown. And without Yahweh doing this and doing it through the person that he has issued hundreds upon hundreds of prophecies about, his Nachri. And, he even introduced his Nachri at the very moment the first home for Yahweh's name was opened, erected, completed. The first Sermon on the Mount by David's son Solomon is when specifically this announcement was made that there would be an acre that Yahweh would use to convey this truth to you, to bring your attention back to David so that you would know what father and son had achieved. And of course, then there's the discussion of the Choter, which David first wrote about, and then Yashaya devoted an entire chapter to. And the Bashar Herald, being Yada, the one who knows. It is everywhere. And this is how God has boldly and publicly announced that the seeds that David has sown will provide the benefits of the relationship. So when you lay down your life in association with your ancestors, I will rise up and I will take a stand to bring into fruition all you have sung, all you have sown from Zerah, basis of Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb, the one cultivating the seeds of the harvest, without hesitating or delaying, right on schedule, pursuant to your approach to providing the way to the benefits of the relationship. Asher. This shall be extracted and withdrawn and delivered out of a small particle of your physiological nature. And so I will establish this reign over this kingdom. Speaking to us about his son, he himself shall reestablish and restore the home for my name, and he will establish and create the family bearing my name. And I will fashion and form the place of honor of his kingdom and sovereignty as an eternal witness forevermore. I myself will be a father for him, and he will be my son. So when that which is perverted and twisted is associated with him, read Christianity and Judaism, I will correctly reciprocate and argue on my son's behalf, deciding with him to chastise those with the scepter of this man by assaulting so as to bring an end to the lives of the children of humankind, of Adam. The two most egregious crimes, and perhaps three, ever perpetrated on humankind was the counterfeiting through identity theft and stealing of everything Yahweh and Dod, father and son, achieved together through the myths of Jesus Christ, Bar Kokhba, and then Muhammad. Their story was perverted and twisted. And so Yahweh is going to side with the true Messiah, his beloved son, Dod, our actual Savior. And those who have promoted this lie will die. And they will die with the scepter of this man. The scepter of this man happens to be the Choter. He is the stick of divine judgment. Now addressing his son directly again, and to us about the man named Shaul, who is the one who played the pivotal role in robbing God's son of what he had achieved and God's children of the benefits that he had provided. He says, "Then my steadfast love and enduring mercy shall not be taken away from him in the manner I rejected being associated with Shaul, whom to show the way to the benefits of the relationship I removed, and I will remove, abolishing before your appearance." Now, he's already had Dod laid down his life, and so he's talking about a future event, and he's saying, I'm going to remove the influence of Shaul before your appearance, which means all traces of Christianity are gone, because Shaul is the plague of death that wrote the Christian New Testament. and that conceived the myth of Jesus. Moreover, your house will remain established, verified, and true, and your kingdom and reign will exist forever as an eternal witness in association with my presence. Your throne and place of honor shall exist and be established forevermore. On my way in, I made a comment on a post that showed a soccer stadium with Jesus will continue to reign as king. And so I asked, so when did the myth of Jesus rob Dode of his sovereignty, of his throne and crown, and of Israel? Consistent with all of these words and everything within this revelation, Nathan correctly conveyed all of it to Dode. Why? Because it was all about Dode. So one prophecy flows into the next, all leading to the same place. Yahweh's return with his beloved Son, our Savior, on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations. As with Dode, so too, to a significant extent, also with the covenant's family that he enabled. It is an honor to be invited into their company. It is an honor to serve them. And it is glorious to see that Yada Yahweh will be included in this magnificent company and actually contribute to it as well. And the crown, the symbol of sovereignty and authority, status, will continually exist, Haya, for the purpose of Chelem, restoration, to dream about and ponder the implications of renewal and restored health, of Tobiah, of those who are favored and agreeable to Yahweh. Through Yada Yah. By knowing and understanding Yahweh. Wa La Yada Yah. In order to Chen receive favor, compassion, and kindness for the Ben Safanya, children, Yahweh treasures. From the Zikaron, the most memorable of men, as a way to memorialize the inheritance right and commemorate Ba Hakal, engaging and enduring within the royal residence and temple of Yahweh. Humbly. Zechariah 6:14. As Richard knows, as he teed up this program and came in to retrieve me, we were going to do a Yahweh blog program and resume our narrative on the voice and continue with Mizmor Psalm 103 outside in our Ocean studio. But we were having some challenges with light reflection and it's harder to film outside. And of course, there was always the threat of rain. And while we're covered there, the rain doesn't come straight down in the Virgin Islands. It comes down sideways sometimes. And we also have a bookshelf there to remind listeners, viewers, that what we're sharing with you is the result of 24 years and 35 volumes of study. Well, when he came to get me, I was engaging with a woman. Her name was Mrs. G. And she condemned me for being hateful, saying, hateful will get you nowhere. Mm-hmm. And my response was, no, hate is a virtue. And that unless we learn to hate, knowing who, why, what, when, and how to hate. Those things that not only are decidedly evil, rape, pedophilia, incest, um, human trafficking, slavery, mass murder, terrorism, and the religions and edicts that encourage more of these things, then we cannot be just. We can't be fair. We can't be moral. And we subject future victims to more victimization when we don't despise these things and recognize how to show our disdain for them. To which she wrote back, no, you're wrong, and hate is simply an emotion, and it affects the emotional person, and it doesn't have any influence on the perpetrators. I said, well, I'm sorry, but the truth is that hate is actually a motivation, as is love. If I love enough, I will be motivated to hate that which is harmful to those I love. And I can't actually be loving of those that I care about unless I'm willing to protect them from those things which are despicable. And that it is essential for us to use our words wisely, to expose things like Islam that encourage pedophilia, incest, rape, misogyny, human trafficking, abduction, mass murder, terrorism, genocide, grotesque apartheid. So we have to be judgmental in this way. And I said, I happen to be driven 90% from my head and 10% from my heart, but it is my heart that motivates me to pursue a intellectual condemnation of these things. Now, the reason I got into this is that I'm reading through this, and I have shared with you that I am different than Dode, whom God loves more than any other, and that Dode is equal parts head and heart. It's kind of like Thomas Jefferson, I think, was a lot like Dode, head and heart, who wrote brilliantly, both men did, about emotions, thinking. I'm not that guy. I am 90% head and 10% heart. That doesn't mean, though, that I am not motivated by emotion. I am. I read things like Zechariah 6:14, and I tear up. It gets me right in the gut and the kidneys, which is the actual seat of emotions in the ancient world. There are statements like this where I read what our God has said, and I'm emotionally charged to share what God wants known. Well, I'm also frustrated that God's people are so oblivious to this profound truth. These are words that stimulate our mind, for sure. But if they don't cause passion and zeal, devotion in your heart, then you're not a complete person. So we have moved from 2 Samuel 7, speaking of the crown that belongs to Dode and to all that God is achieving through him, and then specifically how Yahweh is going to engage at a later time to argue against those who have deprived everyone of what the seeds that he and Dode sowed together through his participation as the Zeroah, and that it's going to make a tremendous difference, and it's going to lead to life for those who embrace the truth and death for those who continue to promote the lie. And as we turn then to Zechariah in what is now the continuation of the 6th chapter. After we have just learned that there'll be these 4 chariots, that they're departing from between the 2 salient mountains in Jerusalem, between Olives and Moriah, and that the red spiritual chariot is the Adama Parah, this bloody red man of the earth who is productive and fruitful, and he represents the man from Edom who is dressed appropriately in red that will save many. And he remains as the black and white chariot go out, and God takes the lives of those who are unsalvageable, who are still pursuing a religious or political agenda that is contrary to what he and his son achieved, so that the way is cleared for those who are receptive to it to be gathered unto the red heifer, and to Eliah, who will operate as the master of ceremony, so they can be prepared for Dode's return. And this is where we were in the midst of that brilliant oratory, where we were even told that those who return, who survive this final exodus with transport provided by Yahweh himself, that they're going to be there because of Yada Yah. And Yada Yah now is far more than the books of the Yada Yahweh series. It is also the gateway to the Yahweh blog. It is the scrolling banner that God lifts up, raises at this time, to not only bring his people home, but to tell them why they're there. So as someone who has served the crown, who has provided for our restoration on behalf of those who are favored and agreeable to Yah through Yada Yah, so that they would receive favor, and that the children that Yahweh treasures would benefit from the Zacharon, the most memorable men of Yahweh. And at this time, those who are being included and invited into the royal residence, home for the covenant family of Yahweh, by the memorable men of Yah, are going to benefit from really 4 or 5 men principally. The first is Moshe, because he, after having a number of breakdowns, he stayed the course. He did what he was asked to do, right up to the point of striking the rocky crag, as opposed to speaking about the rocky crag, so that it would deliver its water, because it is the rocky crag that is going to be delivering this water to cleanse the children of Israel at this time. But Moshe is essential because he told us what God was going to do through the Moed Mikre, and he lived the example of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, where through Pesach, the firstborn of Yisrael were given life, and through Matzah, they were removed from religious and political oppression, so that by Bakurim, they could become part of the covenant family, crossing the sea and the parting of the waters. The second memorable man is obviously Dode, the king, the one who fulfilled all of these things, the one who made these things possible, the one who wrote about what he would achieve on our behalf, that wrote about his own crucifixion, that Yahweh said is his son, and that he is his father, and that he is the Messiah, and that he is the returning king. He is the ultimate Zeroah, just as Moshe was also one of the 3 Zeroah. And the man that tells us that Moshe was the first of the 3 Zeroah, with Dode being the greatest of the Zeroah, is Yashayah, who is the same person who introduces the prophecy of God placing the guilt of the covenant family on the sacrificial lamb to fulfill Passover in Yeshaya 53. And he begins by saying, pay attention to the man that knows the identity of the three Zeroah. Because according to Yeshaya, in the 17th chapter, the man who fulfills the harvests of Shabuah and Teruah, and then serves as the man from Edom, another Yeshaya introduction to save many, as the Adamah Parah. He is the final Zeroah. And that means that the three Zeroah plus Yeshaya, and of course the man who is serving as the master of ceremony at this time, Elia, would take the three Zeroah, these most memorable men of Yahweh, along with the two great prophets, the orator Elia and the writer Yeshaya. And they will all be celebrating. This is the result of how they are properly presented for the first time ever for the benefit of those Yahweh treasures, so that they could receive favor and compassion and kindness as a result of Yada Yah. There is no other Yada Yah. I began using this title for these books 24 years ago. It is the only name that these books have been written under. Here, even the one for Twistianity, Yada Yah. It's always Yada Yah. It means to know Yahweh. And it's more than just Yada Yah to know Yahweh. Yada was my name de plume. It's the name that Yahweh has used to describe me throughout the Torah and prophets. And so Yada Yah is also the name of an individual. It's God's name for me, not just my name for the books telling the world about Yahweh. Oh, this is exceedingly poignant. It's as emotional as it is cerebral. And there are times like this that emotion and intelligence coalesce to bring out a far more desirable result. You know, Yahweh says he hates, and he tells us how, when, why, and what to hate. Yahweh also tells us that he loves, and he tells us what we should adore. Yahweh also says that he is jealous, that he is zealous, that he is passionate. These are all emotions. God is overwhelmingly the greatest intellect in the universe. And yet he too has emotions. And those emotions are appropriate because he hates what we should hate, because it is bad for us. And he loves what we should love. And it was through a man named Beloved that God will allow us to build and place a crown upon his head, which will continually exist as we revere and respect our King. And the crown will continually exist. Haya will always be for the purpose of Chelem, restoration. It's one of the things that is missed about Dowd, because his accolades and achievements were robbed both by Christianity, Paul, and Judaism, Akiba. That Paul's myth robs Dode's reality of restoration. This does Akibas. Dode's second of three lives, which he wrote profusely about in his first of three lives, was for the express purpose of shalem, restoration, to ponder about the implications of a renewed and restored relationship with God. That's why he did it. So our relationship would be reconciled. Why do you think he is returning on the day of reconciliations? And of course, this is for those who are Tobiah, favored and agreeable to Yahweh. This is one of, again, the things that is screwed up by religion. Christianity wants to believe that you come by faith to your salvation, and that it doesn't even matter if you know God. It doesn't matter if you know anything about him. It doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, what you believe. So long as you believe, God will save you, even if you have no clue who he is and would be wholly disagreeable in his family. And in Judaism, it's all about obeying the rabbis, excluding Yahweh from your lives. But in reality, it is Yahweh who chose Abraham and Sarah. It is Yahweh who chose Noach before them. It is Yahweh who chose Moshe. It is Yahweh who chose Dod, Yirmiah, Yashaya, Zechariah, and Yada. Yahweh chooses who he wishes to favor, who he deems are agreeable, pleasant around him. And so the purpose of restoration is for those who are favored and agreeable to Yahweh. And you become that way by yada yah. Heretofore, for the 2,500 years at least from Malachi, the last of the prophets, to today, there has been no way for anyone to be favored and agreeable to Yahweh, no means to restoration. Well, sure, it was there, it was available, it was written, but no one paid any attention to it. No one understood it. No one explained it. No one put the whole picture together and say, here it is. This is what God says. This is what this means. This is what he's offering. This is what he's expecting from you in return. None of that existed. No one recognized that Dod was the returning king, that Dod was our Savior, that Dod is the Messiah and the Son of God, and that other guy, both of the other guys, are false messiahs. Nobody knew it. And so there was, other than to do what I did, no way to find restoration, no way to be favored and agreeable to God. That changed with the publishing and presentation online of Yada Yah. It changes now as we have begun the Yahweh blog. Now you're in a position to know and understand Yahweh. You know what he is offering, what he expects from us in return. And this is also that you can receive favor. And it's for the children Yahweh treasures. And it comes by way of the Zacharon. The Zacharon are the most memorable of men. Those who memorialize the inheritance right and commemorate what it means to engage and endure in the royal residence of Yahweh, part of his covenant family, of entering the temple that Dode gets to build for his father upon his return and being part of that eternal family. It's just as good as it gets, folks. Direct, clear, unambiguous, beneficial, pertinent, relevant, undeniable, affirmed, acceptable. So in the previous presentation, where God mentioned directly yada yada, the source of the Yahweh blog and of the books that you see behind me here, it came by way of the Debar word of Yahweh in Zechariah 9. And at that moment, God was focused upon Lakach, reacquiring those who had been Golah, driven away, claiming them as Chaldea, mind of the world. I think that is Zechariah 6:9, where we were told that the Debar word of Yahweh, Lakach, would grasp hold of and acquire those who had been driven away. And they would claim the Chaldea, which were mine, Yahweh's, of the world, because of yada, by way of yada, through yada. Now, by contrast here, we commence with Dode's crown continually existing to keep Chalam, the dream of restoration, alive. Thereafter, in Zechariah 6:10 and 6:14, they coalesce to a state such that those who are Tobiah and both, who are favored and agreeable to Yah, come by way of yada, knowing Yahweh through yada. Now, these narratives diverge slightly, with God asking in the first account, you should go for yourselves in the same day and come to and enter the house of Yoshia, of those Yahweh has found and supports. Whereas the second iteration of yada, it is in order to chin, receive the favor and compassion of Yahweh. Then both Zechariah 10 and 14 reveal that yada will result in becoming Ben Saphanyah, the children Yahweh treasures. And the first rendering of the proclamation, this is for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, and it pertains to those who have come out of Babel, because it's an exodus that God is bringing them out of geographic, political, and religious Babylon, the United States, the Middle East, and out of those who have converted to Christianity. He's using their DNA and their attitude to determine whom he can pull out of Babylon. My people, bring them out of Babylon. God's providing the conveyance to bring them back to Jerusalem to benefit from this Zacharon, this memorable man. However, now that Dode has arrived, we find that these miraculous, marvelous results come by way of the Zacharon, the most memorable of men, as a way to memorialize the inheritance right and commemorate the Ba'al, engaging and enduring in the royal residence of Yahweh. We're invited into God's home by the crown through these memorable men. This is earth-shattering, mind-expanding, particularly when we compare the similarities and differences between what God is saying, with yada yada being the catalyst, along with Dode and yada making this happen. When I read things like that, when I share things like this with you, I do get this giant sucking sensation that it's, oh my God, that's a lot of responsibility. You're asking so much of a feeble man, of an old man, um, an inadequate man. God, how in the world are we going to even collaborate and deliver on a promise this grand, this great, turning around a world that is this dark, that is this blind, that is this tone deaf, that doesn't even know what to love or what to hate? You got MAGA celebrating the Trump betrayal tour of Israel. And prior to that, it was the progressives that were serving as the pimps of Islam to perpetrate apartheid and genocide on Jews and Israel. And now you have the right and the left both betraying God's people. A billion progressives, probably a billion right-wing wackos, and their conspiracies, 2 billion Muslims. And they're all opposed to God's people now. How do we turn that around, God? I mean, this is you're saying we do. And so you've never been wrong. When you say through a prophet, this is Zechariah, that we are going to accomplish this, it's going to happen. You are going to collect, you're going to withdraw, you're going to provide this final exodus from Babel, and you're going to bring people back into your royal residence, into your home, into your family through these individuals. I believe you. I know you're telling us what will occur. But oh my goodness, God. I'm sure you've looked around and know what we're up against. You know how grotesquely anti-Semitic and immoral X is. You know, we run a delicate balancing act on Facebook, knowing that it is our best hope for a home to convey this message on your behalf. You know that our internet site is in transition. You know that we're all working as diligently as we can in every waking hour to convey this message. As I came back into this studio last night after leaving my office at about 8:45, 9 o'clock, I entered a meeting that had Richard, Kevin, and Leah continuing to describe all that they were working on to convey this message more effectively, more passionately, more broadly. We are devoted to what you're requesting, Yahweh. But this is a tall request. You know, I thank you that we did have the 24 years of writing these 35 books that sit behind me as yada yada. I'm delighted that we've been able to put together in very short order, from your request mid-December, now going live with the Yahweh blog by January 1st and producing hundreds of hours of Yahweh blog since that time, conveying this message, and that we've gone from having virtually no one paying any attention to us on Facebook or YouTube or on X to having anywhere from 1,200 on X to 2,000 or 3,000 between all the accounts on Facebook to 3,700 people on Facebook now that are paying attention. It's a long way in a short period of time. And I know we're making progress. I realize that the very text that I'm sharing with you now is new. It's the basis of what we'll be coming home for. I'm writing it in my spare time between the Iowa blog and managing our outreach in social media. And it's the most insightful, most reassuring, most encouraging things we've ever done. So I realize that God says that we will prevail. Collectively, as a team, the three Zeroa deliver the message that the great prophets have revealed, because we all serve the same God, Yahweh, for the same people, Yehudim. But folks, if we're going to prevail at the level that Yahweh deserves, we're going to need Yehudim in Yisrael. And Yehudim in America, those who are not swallowed up by progressive politics, those who are not devoured by the parasitic ultra-Orthodox religion, those who are still have an open mind, those who are willing to invest the time to go against the popular path and embrace Yahweh by name, his son, by reputation and achievements, and pursue these harvests. If that white chariot's going to be full, if there's going to be standing room only on the Mount of Olives as Elia officiates over the sacrifice of the red heifer, and if there's going to be a goodly number of wonderful people that are part of Shabua harvest and then the Teruah gleaning, we'll need your help. Yahweh is going to engage in a mighty way over the next 8 years. He's already doing so. And he will gradually increase his visibility through us over this time. And he will achieve the desired result through us. But I can tell you, we're all going to be happier if more of us contribute. If more people care about the truth and hate the lie. If more people are willing to go where God's words lead, even though they lead to a place that is exceedingly anti-religious and anti-political and therefore unpopular, we can fill Yahweh's royal residence to capacity. There can be many more who come out of Babylon, whom Yahweh treasures, who will receive his favor and compassion, because they have Yadayah. Now, in this case, the Zacharon title describing the most memorable of men of God, those who acknowledge and validate the great inheritance that is being offered by Yahweh through his Bereth covenant and fulfilled through his Moed Mikre, particularly the first three that Dode enabled, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim. They serve as the catalyst between Ben, Zephaniah, the children of Yahweh, that he treasures, and Bahakal, those engaging and enduring within the royal residence of Yahweh. Now, Zechariah was no doubt aware of the implications of what he had just seen. He would have drawn the same connections that we have derived, and he would have smiled in appreciation of being afforded the opportunity to share this with some 2,600 years of Israelites and Yehudim and even Goyim who could benefit from this message as it would transpire over the last 32 years as God's name was reintroduced to his people. His son would become known again to them. The path to reconciliation would be cleared of its obstacles. So I will read this next statement and we'll conclude this program and recommence in our next. So those who are currently alienated and distant, they'll come, they will return, they will be included, and they will help build the royal residence and temple for engaging and enduring in the home of Yahweh. This is as we were told earlier, that while Dode is being given the responsibility of building it, like father, like son, like king, like herald, like team, we are all eager to delegate and to work collaboratively, because the more hands who contribute, the more that is achieved, the greater the joy. And so what this is saying is that there will be many of us upon Dode's return with Yahweh who will contribute to building the royal residence, the temple of Yahweh, that God has offered to his son the opportunity to recreate. And we will join him. It will be even a greater distinction for us than building, creating, and bestowing Dode his eternal crown. Again, something that is equal parts head and heart. So those who are currently alienated and distant, and that would speak of 99.999% of Yisrael and Yehudim, they're going to come. They're going to return. God says you are going to listen. Why not listen now as opposed to put it off to the end if you've had to endure the time of Jacob's troubles? Listen now. How many lives can you save, including those you love, your parents, your children, your best friends, your siblings, your country, your ethnicity? So those who are currently alienated and distant will come and return, and they will help build Wah-Banah, the royal residence and temple for engaging and enduring in the home of Yahweh, Hakal Yahweh. And then you will all come to know Yada. And you will understand. You will realize and acknowledge that indeed Yahweh of the spiritual messengers has sent me to you. You're listening to the fulfillment of this prophecy. And you will know Yada. And you will understand, you will realize and acknowledge that indeed Yahweh of the Saba has sent me to you. And this will ultimately occur if and when you consistently and actually listen to the call voice of Yahweh your God. Zechariah, remember Yahweh, and memorable men of Yah, Zechariah 6:15. Pause now and contemplate what you've just heard.